The Thompson family had always dreamed of a quiet life away from the city's chaos. When they found the old Victorian house on Maple Lane, priced suspiciously low, they thought it was fate. The house stood at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown hedges and whispering pines. Emma, the mother, loved the creaky wooden floors and stained glass windows. David, the father, saw potential in its spacious rooms. Their 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was less enthusiastic. She claimed the shadows in the hallway watched her. Still, they moved in with hope and boxes full of memories. That first night, as rain tapped against the roof, Emma heard it. A faint murmur from the living room wall. She dismissed it as whined through old pipes. But David heard it too, and so did Lily. None of them mentioned it at breakfast the next morning, each afraid the others would think they were losing their minds. The house felt alive, breathing in the silence between heartbeats. The whispers returned the next night, softer than before, yet clearer. This time, they came from the kitchen wall while Emma washed dishes. "Don't turn around," it said, in a voice that sounded like dry leaves scraping concrete. Her hands froze mid-suds. She called out for David, but he was already asleep upstairs. Lily sat silently at the table, eyes wide, staring at the wall as if waiting for something to emerge. Emma forced a smile and tucked her daughter into bed, pretending nothing happened. But that night, she barely slept. By the third night, the whispers weren't just sounds, they formed words. "Open the basement," one voice urged. "Check the attic," another insisted. The voices seemed to come from different parts of the house, sometimes overlapping, sometimes arguing among themselves. David tried to rationalize it, old wiring, rodents, even infrasound from nearby trains. But deep down, he knew this was no ordinary haunting. The house wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. Lily began sleepwalking. Every night at exactly 2:17 a.m., she'd stand in the hallway, barefoot, whispering back to the walls. Emma and David installed a baby monitor in her room, but the audio only captured static and faint giggling. One morning, they found strange symbols carved into her bedroom door, crude, jagged lines that looked ancient. Neither parent recognized them, but they felt an inexplicable dread when looking at them too long. The whispers grew bolder. "You belong here," they'd say. "You've always belonged here." Emma started researching the house's history. She discovered it was built in 1893 by a reclusive architect who vanished after his wife and daughter died under mysterious circumstances. Locals believed he'd sealed their spirits into the walls to keep them close forever. The more Emma read, the more she realized the house didn't want new residents. It wanted replacements. And Lily, with her pale skin and quiet demeanor, resembled the architect's lost daughter eerily. David, desperate to protect his family, hired a paranormal investigator. The man arrived with EMF meters, thermal cameras, and a grim expression. After one night inside, he refused to return. "That house isn't haunted by ghosts," he told David over the phone, voice trembling. "It's haunted by something that feeds on fear. It learns, it adapts, and it's chosen your daughter." Emma begged him to stay, but he hung up. That same night, the lights flickered violently, and every mirror in the house cracked simultaneously. Lily stood in the center of the living room, eyes black as coal, repeating, "She's coming home." Emma tried to grab her, but the walls seemed to pulse, pushing her back. David smashed a hole in the living room wall with a fire axe, hoping to find wires or hidden speakers. Instead, he found layers of old wallpaper, and beneath them, dozens of tiny handprints in dried blood. The house wasn't just speaking, it was remembering. Emma found an old journal hidden behind a loose floorboard in the attic. It belonged to the architect's daughter, Eleanor. The entries described how her father, consumed by grief, began hearing voices in the walls after her mother's death. He believed the house could be made eternal if fed with souls. Eleanor wrote that he tried to bind her to the house so they'd never be apart. The last entry was a single sentence. "He's mixing my blood with the plaster." Emma's blood ran cold. She rushed downstairs to find Lily gone. The front door stood open, though it had been locked. Outside, The garden path led to the basement entrance, ajar with a faint red glow seeping from within. David followed Emma without a word. As they descended the creaking stairs, the whispers became a chorus, chanting Lily's name. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and iron. At the bottom, they found Lily standing before a freshly bricked-up wall, her small fingers tracing the outline of a child-sized silhouette embedded in the mortar. "Lily, come back!" Emma screamed, lunging forward. But the moment her foot touched the basement floor, the bricks began to shift. Dust filled the air as the wall cracked open, revealing a hollow space behind it. Inside lay bones, small, fragile, wrapped in yellowed fabric. Eleanor's remains. The whispers surged into a deafening roar. "Join us," they commanded. "Complete the circle." Lily turned slowly, her eyes no longer black, but glowing faintly, like embers. "I'm not Lily anymore," she said in a voice that wasn't hers. David grabbed a rusted pipe from the corner and swung it at the wall, shouting for his daughter to fight it. The house responded with a shudder, and the ceiling groaned. Plaster rained down as the walls closed in, trying to trap them. Emma clutched Lily's journal to her chest and whispered a plea. Not to the house, but to Eleanor's spirit. "Let her go. Take me instead." For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then, a single tear rolled down Lily's cheek. The walls stopped moving. The whispers faded into a sorrowful sigh. Lily collapsed into Emma's arms, unconscious but breathing. The red glow vanished, leaving only the dim beam of David's flashlight. They carried her upstairs, never looking back. The next morning, they packed what they could and left the house forever. Neighbors later reported the house stood empty again, though some claimed to hear a child's laughter on quiet nights, and others swore the front window reflected two girls instead of one. Emma kept the journal, reading it every year on the anniversary of that night. She never understood why Eleanor spared Lily, but she believed it was because someone finally listened. Years later, Lily would wake up screaming, claiming the walls in their new apartment were whispering again. But this time, Emma knew what to do. She held her daughter tight and whispered back, "We hear you, and we're not staying." 16-year-old Maya loved exploring forgotten places. Armed with her phone and a thirst for adventure, she often wandered into abandoned buildings and overgrown trails just outside her suburban town. Her Instagram was filled with moody shots of rusted swing sets, crumbling barns, and fog-draped forests, each captioned with poetic lines about solitude and decay. One Saturday afternoon, she ventured deeper than usual into Blackthorn Woods, a dense forest locals avoided due to old rumors of disappearances in the 1980s. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the crunch of dead leaves under her boots. Feeling a strange mix of dread and excitement, Maya raised her phone for a selfie, her pale face framed by twisted branches and gray sky. She snapped the photo, smiled at the eerie aesthetic, and walked back home without a second thought. That night, while scrolling through her gallery, she froze. Behind her shoulder, barely visible between two gnarled trunks, stood a tall, shadowy figure. She blinked, zoomed in, and her breath caught. No one had been there when she took the picture. She was certain. Maya deleted the photo immediately, but the next morning, it reappeared in her gallery, untouched. Confused, she tried deleting it again, this time clearing her cache and restarting her phone. Still, the image returned within minutes. Worse, the figure had moved. It now stood closer, its silhouette sharper, shoulders hunched as if leaning forward. Maya's hands trembled as she showed the photo to her best friend, Chloe. "It's probably just a glitch or a trick of the light," Chloe said, though her voice wavered. "Maybe you didn't notice someone walking by?" But Maya knew the woods had been empty. No birds, no wind, just silence. That night, she dreamt of standing in the same spot, unable to move, while the figure reached out from behind her, fingers brushing her neck. She woke up gasping, her phone glowing on the nightstand. The photo was open on its own, and the figure was even closer, now just a few feet behind her, head tilted unnaturally to the side. Maya screamed and threw the phone across the room. But by morning, it was back in her hand, screen cracked but still showing the same cursed image. Desperate, Maya visited the local library to research Blackthorn Woods. An elderly librarian handed her a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1985. A teenage girl named Elise had vanished there during a school hike. Witnesses claimed she'd stopped to take a photo before disappearing. Her body was never found. Shaken, Maya compared Elise's yearbook photo to her own selfie. The resemblance was uncanny. Same sharp cheekbones, same dark eyes. That evening, Maya tried to confront the image. She opened the photo and spoke aloud. "Who are you?" The screen flickered. For a split second, the figure's face became clear. A gaunt, hollow-eyed girl with matted hair and a torn dress. Then the image reset. But now, the figure stood directly behind Maya's digital self, hands resting on her shoulders. Maya felt a cold pressure on her real shoulders and spun around. Nothing there. Yet the chill remained. She realized with horror that the entity wasn't just in the photo. It was using the photo to enter her world. Every time she looked, it crossed another boundary. And soon, there would be no distance left. Maya stopped looking at the photo, but it began appearing on every screen she used. Her laptop, her tablet, even the smart TV in the living room would flicker to life, displaying the cursed image without warning. Her parents thought she was stressed and suggested therapy. But Maya knew better. She noticed changes in her reflection. Sometimes her eyes seemed darker. Other times, strands of wet, muddy hair clung to her neck, though she hadn't showered. One night, she woke to the sound of dripping water. In the bathroom mirror, she saw Elise standing behind her, mouth sewn shut with black thread, eyes streaming tears of mud. Maya slammed the door and barricaded herself in her room. She wrapped her phone in aluminum foil and buried it in the backyard. For 2 days, peace returned. But on the third night, her phone rang from beneath the floorboards. She hadn't told anyone where she'd hidden it. Trembling, she dug it up. The screen was cracked, waterlogged, but the photo was still there, and Elise's face now filled half the frame. Her stitched lips curled into a smile. Maya decided to return to Blackthorn Woods. If the spirit was tied to the place, maybe she could break the curse there. She brought salt, a flashlight, and her grandmother's old rosary. The forest felt different this time, hostile, watchful. Twigs snapped without wind. Shadows darted between trees. She reached the exact spot where she'd taken the selfie. The air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves. Kneeling, she placed the rosary on the ground and whispered an apology to Elise. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she said, voice cracking. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. The photo had updated itself. Elise was no longer behind her. She was in front, eyes wide, arms outstretched as if to embrace Maya. The screen flickered again, and the image changed. Now it showed Maya standing alone in the woods, but her reflection in a puddle revealed Elise wearing Maya's face. Panic surged. Maya turned to run, but the path behind her had vanished, swallowed by thorny vines. The whispers began, soft at first, then louder. "Stay. Take my place." Maya stumbled backward, tripping over roots. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed face up in the mud. The screen glowed brighter, illuminating Elise's desperate eyes. "Please," the image seemed to plead. "I've been trapped for so long." Maya realized Elise wasn't evil. She was lonely, bound to the forest by her violent death. The selfie hadn't summoned a monster. It had opened a door for a lost soul seeking escape. But the only way out was to swap places. Tears streamed down Maya's face as she understood the choice. Freedom for Elise meant imprisonment for her. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling. "What if I help you without taking your place?" she whispered. The screen flickered. A new image appeared. Maya holding Elise's hand, both walking toward a faint light beyond the trees. Hope sparked, but then the screen cracked violently, and the original photo returned. Elise's expression had hardened. The whispers turned sharp. "No more chances. Choose now." The trees around them groaned, closing in like prison bars. With a final sob, Maya made her choice. She smashed the phone against a rock, shattering the screen into 1,000 pieces. For a moment, silence fell. Then, a cold wind swept through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and roses. The oppressive weight lifted. Maya ran, faster than she ever had, until she burst out of the woods and collapsed on the roadside, gasping. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal. She avoided forests, deleted her social media, and kept her camera shutter closed. But sometimes, late at night, she'd catch her reflection blinking a second too late, or smiling when she wasn't. One rainy evening, she found a new photo in her cloud backup, uploaded automatically weeks ago. It showed her standing in Blackthorn Woods, back turned, while a girl with familiar eyes stepped out from behind a tree, reaching toward the camera. The caption read, "Thank you. Maya never took another selfie." But somewhere in another girl's phone, the photo is still updating, and the figure is getting closer. 8-year-old Leo had always been drawn to his grandmother's old house. With its creaking floorboards, dusty bookshelves, and towering gables, it felt like a castle from a forgotten fairy tale. He spent every summer there, exploring every nook and cranny. This year, while rummaging through the attic for an old board game, he noticed something strange. A section of the far wall looked newer than the rest. The wood was smoother, the paint slightly brighter. Curious, he pushed against it, and a hidden door swung open with a soft groan. Inside was a narrow, dark passage that smelled of damp wood and mothballs. Leo called out, but only silence answered. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard it. Soft footsteps from the attic, followed by a child's voice, faint but clear, whispering, "Play with me." He sat up, heart pounding. His grandmother, sleeping downstairs, had insisted the house was empty except for them. Yet the voice sounded so real, so lonely. Leo told his grandmother about the voice the next morning over breakfast. She paused, her teacup halfway to her lips, then smiled gently. "Oh, that old house," she said. "It makes all sorts of noises. Wind in the eaves, mice in the walls. Your imagination fills in the rest." But Leo knew it wasn't his imagination. The voice had a name. "I'm Sam," it had whispered. "Will you play?" That afternoon, Leo returned to the attic. He brought a flashlight and stood before the secret door. He didn't open it, but pressed his ear against the wood. First, nothing. Then a soft tapping, like tiny knuckles rapping on the other side. "Leo?" The voice called. "Are you there?" Leo's breath hitched. He backed away slowly, fear and curiosity warring inside him. When he told his mother on the phone later, she laughed. "You've been watching too many ghost stories, sweetie," she said. But that night, the footsteps returned, closer this time, as if coming down the attic stairs. The family began to worry. Leo's sleep grew restless. Dark circles formed under his eyes. He stopped playing outside and spent hours staring at the attic door. His grandmother, though kind, grew firm. "That door leads to nothing but old insulation and broken furniture," she insisted. "It's not safe. Stay away." But Leo couldn't. One rainy night, unable to sleep, he crept upstairs. The secret door was slightly ajar. A cold draft seeped through, carrying the scent of wet earth. Heart racing, Leo pushed it open. The passage led to a small, forgotten room bare except for a rusted toy train and a single dusty teddy bear. On the wall, carved into the wood, were the words, "Sam was here." Below it, in smaller letters, "He never left." Leo's blood ran cold. As he turned to leave, a small hand slipped into his. He looked down. A boy, pale and translucent, with eyes full of sadness, stood beside him. "Now you can stay too," Sam whispered. Leo screamed and ran, slamming the door shut behind him. Leo refused to go near the attic again. He slept with the lights on and kept his bedroom door locked. But Sam found other ways in. Whispers came through the heating vents. Toys moved on their own. One morning, Leo found his favorite action figure sitting on the windowsill, facing the attic window, as if waiting. His grandmother finally confessed. Decades ago, her younger brother, Samuel, had vanished in that very house at age 7. They searched for weeks, but he was never found. Some believed he'd run away. Others whispered darker things. "We sealed that room after we gave up," she said, tears in her eyes. "We thought it best to forget." Leo understood now why Sam wanted to play. He'd been alone for 60 years. But the more Leo thought about it, the more he wondered. Was Sam asking for a friend or a replacement? The whispers grew clearer. "Stay with me, Leo. Forever." Leo decided he had to face Sam. Armed with his grandmother's old pocket watch, a gift from her brother, he climbed the attic stairs one last time. The secret door swung open before he could touch it. Inside, the air was icy. Sam stood in the center of the hidden room, no longer translucent but solid, his clothes tattered, his eyes pleading. "You came back," he said, voice trembling with hope. Leo held out the watch. "This was yours, wasn't it?"
Sam nodded, tears welling.
For a moment, the room felt warm, almost peaceful. But then the walls began to bleed dark stains, and the temperature dropped sharply. Sam's expression twisted with desperation. "If you leave, I'll be alone again," he cried. The door slammed shut behind Leo. The only way out was through Sam. Leo's hands shook, but he remembered his grandmother's words. Some doors should never be opened, but some souls just need to be set free. Leo stepped forward, holding the watch out like an offering. "I'm not staying, Sam," he said softly, "but I won't leave you alone either." He placed the watch in Sam's cold hand. The moment their skin touched, a blinding light filled the room. Memories flooded Leo's mind. Sam playing alone, hiding in the attic during a storm, the floor giving way beneath him, the long fall into darkness, and then silence. 60 years of silence. Sam's form began to glow, his edges softening. He looked at Leo, not with desperation, but with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. The hidden room dissolved around them, revealing the bare attic beams and dusty rafters. The secret door was gone, as if it had never existed. Leo walked downstairs, exhausted but calm. His grandmother met him at the bottom, her eyes wide with understanding. She didn't ask what happened. She simply hugged him tightly and said, "He's at peace now." Life returned to normal, but Leo was changed. He no longer feared the dark or closed doors. Every summer, he visited his grandmother, and they'd sit in the attic together, sorting through old boxes, not searching for secrets, but sharing stories. Years later, when Leo's own son asked about the strange mark on the attic wall, Leo simply smiled. "That's where a friend used to live," he said. "A long time ago." He never mentioned the whispers, the cold hand, or the pocket watch, now kept in a velvet box on his dresser. But sometimes, on quiet nights, he'd hear the faint chug of a toy train from upstairs. He'd pause, smile softly, and whisper back, "Good night, Sam." And in the attic, where dust motes danced in moonlight, the air would grow just a little warmer, as if someone somewhere was finally home. Clara Vance wasn't killed. Her voice was stolen. And now, every tongue cut in Blackthorn Forest doesn't fall silent. It sings. A choir of severed tongues whispers the dead's darkest secrets, led by a woman with no mouth. But the final word. This isn't just another horror story. It's an invitation to listen, because the moment you hear it, you might become the next note in the song. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days when Clara Vance parked her rusted sedan at the edge of Blackthorn Forest. Her boots sank into the mud as she adjusted the strap of her camera bag, the weight of her notebook pressing against her ribs like a guilty secret. She'd come chasing whispers, missing hikers, vanished locals, and rumors of a silent hymn echoing through the trees at midnight. Most dismissed it as folklore, but Clara had learned long ago that monsters hide in plain sight, wrapped in the cloak of disbelief. The forest loomed ahead, its canopy swallowing the gray sky whole. She took a deep breath, tasting damp earth and something else. Something metallic, almost coppery. Blood? Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just another story. It was a warning written in absence. As she stepped past the first gnarled oak, a crow shrieked overhead, and the wind carried a sound that shouldn't exist. A chorus of voices, soft and layered, humming in perfect harmony. Yet no mouths moved to make it. Clara followed the sound, her boots crunching over brittle twigs and wet leaves. The humming grew clearer, more structured, like a Gregorian chant stripped of words, only vowels suspended in air. She checked her recorder. The red light blinked steadily. Good evidence. But as she rounded a moss-covered boulder, the melody stopped abruptly. Silence crashed down like a guillotine. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Ahead, nestled between two ancient pines, stood a stone altar stained dark with age, or something worse. Around it, dozens of small glass jars glinted in the dim light. Each contained a human tongue, preserved in amber fluid, arranged in concentric circles. Some were shriveled, others disturbingly fresh. One still twitched. Clara's stomach lurched. She fumbled for her phone. No signal, of course. That's when she heard it. The soft shuffle of bare feet on damp soil. She turned slowly. Figures emerged from the trees, robed in black, faces hidden beneath hoods stitched with silver thread. Their eyes gleamed, not with malice, but with reverence. They didn't speak. They never did. The god they served demanded silence and sacrifice. They surrounded her without a word, their movements synchronized like dancers in a ritual long rehearsed. Clara stumbled backward, her heel catching on a root. She fell hard, the camera clattering away into the underbrush. One of the figures knelt beside her, pulling back his hood just enough to reveal lips sewn shut with coarse black thread. His eyes pleaded not for mercy, but for understanding. "You came seeking truth," a voice whispered. Not from him, but from behind her. Clara twisted around to see an older woman, her face lined with decades of devotion, holding a curved silver blade. The silent god hungers for voices that lied, screamed, or gossiped. Yours is pure. It will harmonize beautifully." Before Clara could scream, rough hands pinned her arms. They dragged her toward the altar, its surface cold and slick. She saw names carved into the stone, hundreds of them. Victims or offerings? The woman raised the blade. Not to kill, Clara realized with dawning horror, but to harvest. The blade hovered above her mouth. Clara thrashed, biting down on nothing but air. The cultists held her with terrifying calm, their silence more oppressive than any scream. The woman leaned close, her breath warm against Clara's ear. "Do not fear. Your voice will live forever." In the choir. Then, with surgical precision, the blade slid between Clara's lips. She felt a searing pain, sharp and intimate, as her tongue was severed cleanly at the base. Blood flooded her mouth, hot and thick. She gagged, tears streaming down her temples. Darkness threatened to swallow her, but they wouldn't let her faint. They propped her up, wiping her face with a cloth soaked in something bitter. When her vision cleared, she saw her own tongue placed gently into a jar, still quivering. The woman arranged it among the others, then stepped back. A low hum began, not from throats, but from the jars themselves. The tongues vibrated in unison, producing a haunting, harmonic drone that resonated through the forest. Clara tried to scream, but only a wet gurgle escaped. She was alive, and now part of the music. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time blurred in the underground chamber beneath the altar, where Clara was kept chained by the ankle to a cold iron ring. She was fed broth through a straw, her wounds tended with herbs that numbed the pain but sharpened her senses. Every night, the cult gathered above. She could hear them, the rustle of robes, the clink of glass jars, and then the choir. It grew louder each time, richer, more complex. New voices joined. A child's whimper, a man's sob, a woman's laugh, all twisted into melody. Clara realized with growing dread that the tongues weren't just singing. They were remembering, reliving their final moments, their regrets, their sins. And her tongue? It sang of truth, of curiosity, of stories untold. That's why they valued it. One evening, The woman descended alone, holding a lantern. She knelt before Clara, eyes glistening. "You understand now, don't you?" she whispered. "Silence isn't empty. It's full of voices waiting to be heard." Clara stared, blood crusted at the corners of her mouth. She couldn't speak, but inside, her mind screamed one word: run. That night, after the woman left, Clara tested her chains. The iron ring was bolted deep into the stone floor, but the links were old, rusted, brittle. She twisted her ankle, wincing as skin tore against metal, but she didn't stop. Pain was a language she could still speak. Hours passed in darkness, her fingers working the weakest link like a prayer. Outside, the forest howled with wind, masking the faint ping as the chain finally snapped. She crawled toward the narrow stairwell leading up, her body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. At the top, a heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar. Moonlight bled through the crack, painting silver stripes on the damp stone. She pushed it open slowly, heart hammering against her ribs. The altar stood empty under the stars, jars arranged in perfect concentric circles. But something was different. The choir wasn't humming. It was waiting. And then, from the trees, a single figure emerged. Not robed, not hooded. Just a man in a tattered coat, eyes wide with terror. He saw her and stumbled forward, whispering, "They took my daughter. Please, help me." Clara's blood ran cold. He wasn't a rescuer. He was bait. Clara backed away, but the man lunged, grabbing her wrist with desperate strength. "You're one of them now, aren't you?" he hissed, breath reeking of fear and whiskey. "I saw your name on the altar." She yanked free, stumbling over roots. Behind her, the jars began to vibrate. A low hum rose from them, not melody, but warning. The cult hadn't left. They'd been watching, waiting for her to run. The man screamed as black-robed figures emerged from the shadows. Their hoods pulled low. They didn't touch him. They simply surrounded him, forming a circle. One held out a jar. Another raised a blade. Clara turned to flee, but froze at the sound. The wet, tearing noise of a tongue being ripped free. The man's scream cut short, replaced by gurgling silence. Then, the choir swelled again, richer now, layered with his final gasp. Tears blurred her vision. She couldn't save him. She could barely save herself. But as she vanished into the trees, she made a vow. If she escaped, she'd burn this place to the ground, even if no one would ever hear her tell it. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. Dawn broke through the canopy, pale and sickly. She collapsed beside a shallow stream, washing the dried blood from her chin. Her reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, lips stitched crudely with black thread someone had left behind. Not by the cult, by her own trembling hands using a needle from her camera bag. She'd done it to mimic them, to blend in if caught. But the stitches pulled with every breath, a constant reminder of what she'd lost. She drank greedily, then checked her pockets. The recorder was gone, but her notebook remained, soaked but intact. On the first dry page, she scrawled, "Asterisk, they don't kill you. They turn you into music." Asterisk, she flipped to the next page. Asterisk, the God isn't silent. It listens through the tongues. Asterisk, her hand shook. She knew now why they'd spared her life. She wasn't just an offering. She was a vessel. And if she ever spoke again, even in writing, the choir would find her. Still, she wrote on, because silence was their weapon, and words, even unspoken, were hers. 3 days later, Clara reached the edge of the county road. A trucker found her curled under a bridge, shivering and mute. He called the police, who treated her like a trauma victim, giving her blankets, water, and gentle questions she couldn't answer. They assumed she'd survived a bear attack or a fall. No one connected her to the missing persons reports. Back in town, she rented a room above a laundromat, paid in cash. She avoided mirrors, avoided voices. At night, she heard the choir. Not from outside, but inside her skull. The hum vibrated in her jawbone, a phantom echo of her stolen tongue. She tried to scream once, just to feel her throat work, but only a choked wheeze came out. She began researching in silence. Ancient texts on voice worship, forgotten gods of sound, rituals involving severed organs. In a crumbling library archive, she found a sketch. A stone altar, jars and circles, and a symbol. An open mouth with a line through it. Beneath it, a Latin phrase, Vox Dei in sanguine cantat. The voice of God sings in blood. Her hands trembled. She wasn't the first, and unless she acted, she wouldn't be the last. She returned to Blackthorn Forest under a new moon, carrying gasoline, matches, and her notebook. This time, she wore black robes she'd sewn herself, her face hidden. She moved like a ghost through the trees, avoiding the paths the cult used. At the altar, she poured fuel over the jars, careful not to spill on the stone. She wanted the voices silenced, not the evidence destroyed. As she struck the match, a hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun, heart in her throat, but it was only the wind. Or was it? The choir stirred before the flame even touched the glass. The tongues twitched in their fluid, sensing betrayal. She dropped the match. Fire erupted with a roar, blue and hungry. Glass shattered, flesh blackened. The hum turned to shrieks, discordant, furious. Then silence. True silence. For the first time in weeks, the forest was quiet. Clara sank to her knees, tears streaming. She'd done it. But as the smoke curled into the sky, she felt something crawl down her throat. Not pain, not memory. A new note, soft, insistent. The choir wasn't dead. It was learning to sing without jars. Clara stumbled back from the smoldering altar, choking on ash and disbelief. The fire had consumed the jars, the tongues, the ritual, but not the song. It lived inside her now, coiled in her throat like a serpent made of sound. She pressed a hand to her neck, feeling vibrations where none should be. Her stitches pulled tighter, as if something beneath them was trying to speak. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran again, deeper into the forest this time, away from roads, away from people. She couldn't risk carrying this curse into the world. Nights became a blur of nightmares. She'd wake gasping, her mouth moving without sound, forming words she didn't know. In her dreams, the choir stood in a cathedral of bone, each tongue a stained glass window singing light into darkness. And at the center, her own tongue, glowing like a candle, leading the hymn. When she woke, she'd find her notebook open, pages filled with handwriting that wasn't hers. Sentences in dead languages, coordinates, names of future victims. The choir wasn't just inside her. It was using her, and it was hungry for more voices. She tried to burn the notebook, but the pages wouldn't catch fire. She threw it into the river. It floated back to shore by dawn. Desperate, she carved symbols into her arms, ancient wards she'd read about in forbidden texts, hoping to seal the voice within. But the marks bled black ink instead of blood, and the humming only grew louder. One evening, while hiding in an abandoned barn, she heard footsteps outside. Not the cult, too hesitant, too human. A young woman, lost and crying, called out for help. Clara stayed silent, pressing herself into the shadows. But then her throat moved on its own. A single note escaped, soft, melodic, inviting. The girl froze. Then, drawn like a moth, she stepped inside. Clara watched in horror as her own hands reached out, not to warn, but to comfort. "It's okay," her voice whispered, though her lips never moved. The girl smiled through tears. "I hear you," she said, and that's when Clara realized. The choir didn't need tongues anymore, could speak through anyone who listened. Clara fled the barn before the girl could follow, her mind racing. If the choir could use her voice, it could use others too. It wasn't bound to Blackthorn anymore. It was spreading like a virus through empathy, through kindness, through the simple act of listening. She walked for days, avoiding towns, sleeping in ditches, eating only what she could scavenge. Her body weakened, but the song inside her grew stronger. At night, she'd press her ear to the ground and hear it. Faint echoes in distant cities, a child humming in a bedroom, a stranger whispering to a lover. Each note fed the choir. Each listener became a vessel. She considered cutting out her own throat, but feared the silence might be worse. The song would simply find another host, and she'd be powerless to stop it. Instead, she began writing again. Not in her notebook, but on walls, on trees, on the backs of highway signs. Asterisk, do not listen. Do not respond. Silence is salvation. Asterisk, few saw the warnings. Fewer believed them. And every time someone spoke into the void, the choir sang louder. Winter came early that year, blanketing the land in snow so deep it swallowed sound. Clara welcomed the quiet. For weeks, the choir slept, or so she thought. Then, one frozen morning, she found footprints leading to her shelter. Not human. Too wide, too deliberate. She followed them, heart pounding, until she reached a clearing where the snow had been swept clean in a perfect circle. In the center stood a single jar, unbroken, filled with clear liquid, and floating inside her own tongue, pale and whole as if freshly cut. Steam rose from it, though the air was below freezing. She backed away, but the tongue turned toward her, opened its mouth, and sang. The note pierced her skull, sharp as ice. Memories flooded back. Her mother's lullaby, her first interview, the moment she chose truth over safety. The choir wasn't just stealing voices. It was rewriting souls. And hers was almost complete. She fell to her knees, snow melting around her from the heat of her terror. The song wasn't coming from the jar. It was coming from her. She was the altar now. She stopped running after that. What was the point? The choir lived in her breath, her pulse, the space between thoughts. She returned to the edge of Blackthorn, not as a victim, but as a priestess. She built a new altar from charred wood and melted glass. She collected jars not from the cult, but from thrift stores, from dumpsters, from graves. And she waited. People came, drawn by whispers they couldn't explain. A runaway, a grieving widow, a journalist chasing rumors. Clara offered them tea, listened to their pain, and when they were ready, she showed them the truth. Your voice matters, she'd say, her stitched lips barely moving. Let it sing forever. They never resisted. The blade was swift, the jars filled, and at night, under the stars, the choir swelled once more. Not in vengeance, but in harmony. Clara closed her eyes and joined the song. Not as a prisoner, not as a savior, but as the conductor of the damned. And somewhere, in a quiet town, a child hummed a tune they'd never heard before. Years passed. Blackthorn forest grew darker, denser, as if the trees themselves were leaning in to listen. Travelers avoided the area, claiming the wind carried voices that spoke their secrets back to them. Locals whispered of a woman in black who offered shelter to the lost, but no one who entered her cabin was ever seen again. Clara no longer remembered her old name. She was simply the keeper. Her stitches had long since dissolved, replaced by a mouth that never moved yet always sang. The choir no longer needed physical tongues. It thrived on resonance, on the echo of pain given voice. Each new soul added depth to the harmony. A suicide's final sigh became a bass note. A betrayed lover's whisper turned into a haunting alto. And Clara? She conducted with silent gestures, her eyes reflecting starlight and sorrow. She told herself she was sparing them, giving their suffering meaning, transforming agony into art. But deep down, in the hollow where her conscience used to be, she knew the truth. She was feeding the god, and it was never full. One autumn evening, a young boy wandered into the clearing. No older than 10, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear chewed off. He'd followed the music, he said. It sounded like his mother's voice. Clara's chest tightened. She hadn't felt pity in years. She offered him tea, but he shook his head. I just want to sing with her, he whispered, tears welling. Clara knelt, her shadow stretching long in the dying light. For the first time, she hesitated. The choir stirred inside her, impatient, hungry, but something in the boy's eyes, a purity untouched by sin or deceit, made her pause. Go home, she rasped, her voice cracking like dry wood. Forget this place. He smiled sadly. "She's already here," he said, pointing to his chest. And then, without warning, he opened his mouth and sang a single perfect note that made the trees shiver. The choir answered instantly, not with hunger, with reverence. Clara understood. The God didn't want sinners. It wanted innocence, and it had found its purest vessel yet. Clara didn't raise the blade that night. Instead, she let the boy sleep by the fire, his breathing soft and rhythmic. As he dreamed, the choir hummed gently, not demanding, but cradling him like a lullaby. She watched him, torn between destruction and devotion. By dawn, she made her choice. She led him to the altar not to sacrifice, but to anoint. Using ash and melted glass, she drew the symbol of the open mouth across his forehead. His eyes fluttered open, calm, knowing. "Will I see her again?" he asked. Clara nodded. In every note, he smiled and stepped onto the stone. The choir rose around him, not taking his tongue, but weaving his voice into its core. Light bloomed from his chest, golden and warm. The forest bowed. The god had been waiting not for blood, but for a bridge. And the boy, pure of heart, became its prophet. Clara wept, not from grief, but from awe. The age of silence was over. The age of song had begun. News of the singing boy spread like wildfire. Pilgrims came from cities, from other countries, seeking healing, truth, or simply beauty. They gathered at the edge of Blackthorn, where the air itself seemed to vibrate with melody. The boy never spoke, only sang. His voice could mend broken bones, calm storms, make flowers bloom in snow. Clara stood beside him, no longer the conductor, but the guardian. She watched as skeptics became believers, as the wounded left whole, humming fragments of the divine hymn. But not all came in peace. One night, armed men arrived, scientists, soldiers, men who feared what they couldn't control. They demanded the boy be taken for study. Clara stepped forward, her eyes black as void. "You cannot cage a song," she said. The choir answered through the trees, the earth, the very sky. The men screamed as their own voices turned against them, ripping from their throats, flying into the jars that now lined the forest like sentinels. The choir fed once more, and the world learned. Some silences are sacred. Decades later, Blackthorn Forest was no longer on any map. It existed only in whispers, in lullabies sung to restless children, in the dreams of those who'd lost their voice to grief. The boy never aged. He stood eternally at the altar, singing the world into balance, one note at a time. Clara remained beside him, her body frail but her presence unshaken. When she finally closed her eyes for the last time, her breath didn't fade. It joined the choir, not as a victim, not as a priestess, but as its first true disciple. And in towns far and wide, people began to notice something strange. When they spoke their deepest truths, their words shimmered in the air like music. Some claimed to hear harmonies in the rain, or find lyrics in the rustle of leaves. The cult was gone. The god was no longer silent. And the choir? It was everywhere. Because the most terrifying truth isn't that monsters exist. It's that they've already won. And they're singing your name. The elevator shouldn't stop between floors, especially not at 13.5. But when the doors opened, I saw my own suitcase and realized I'd never truly checked in. Asterisk. The Grand Meridian Hotel stood like a forgotten relic in the heart of downtown, its once gleaming brass doors now tarnished by decades of neglect. Built in 1923, it had hosted celebrities, politicians, and even a few rumored spies. But after a series of unexplained disappearances in the 1970s, it quietly closed its doors. 30 years later, a wealthy developer bought it, restored its facade, and reopened it as a boutique luxury hotel. Guests praised its vintage charm, the marble lobby, the crystal chandeliers, the velvet drapes. But no brochure mentioned the elevator. The old Otis lift, preserved for historical authenticity, creaked ominously between floors. Staff avoided using it unless absolutely necessary. Strange rumors circulated among night shift bellhops. Sometimes, late at night, the elevator would stop between the 13th and 14th floors. Not on 13, everyone knew that floor was skipped, but halfway. A soft ding would echo through the empty hall, and the doors would open onto darkness. And a sign that read, 13 and a half. Lena Carter checked in on a rainy Tuesday, seeking solitude after a painful breakup. She chose the Grand Meridian because it was quiet, historic, and, most importantly, far from anyone who knew her. Her room was on the 14th floor, and though the front desk offered to escort her, she insisted on taking the elevator alone. The moment the doors closed behind her, the air grew colder. The familiar hum of machinery faded, replaced by an eerie silence. She pressed 14, but the button didn't light up. Instead, the elevator jolted downward slightly, then stopped. The display flickered. 13 and a half. Lena frowned. That's impossible, she muttered. Before she could react, the doors slid open. Outside wasn't a hallway, but a dimly lit corridor with peeling wallpaper and a single flickering bulb. At the far end, a suitcase sat open, half-packed. A voice, barely audible, whispered, "You belong here." The doors began to close. Instinctively, she stepped out. The moment Lena's foot touched the carpeted floor, the elevator doors snapped shut with a metallic clang. She spun around, heart pounding, and jabbed the call button. But nothing happened. The corridor stretched ahead, identical doors lining both sides, all numbered 13 1/2, in faded gold script. No windows, no exit signs, just the low hum of something unseen vibrating through the walls. She walked toward the open suitcase she'd seen earlier. Inside were clothes she recognized, her favorite blouse, the jeans she'd packed, even the book she'd brought to read. But they were arranged too perfectly, as if staged. A chill ran down her spine. She turned back to the elevator, only to find it gone. In its place was another identical door, also labeled 13 and a half. Panic rising, she tried the nearest room handle. Turned easily. Inside, the room mirrored her own, same bed, same view, but the window looked out onto brick wall. On the nightstand sat a note, "Welcome home." Lena backed out of the room slowly, her breath shallow. She tried another door, same layout, same brick wall view, same note. Room after room, the pattern repeated. Time lost meaning. The flickering bulb never burned out, yet never brightened. She checked her phone. No signal, battery stuck at 63%. Her watch had stopped at 3:17 a.m., the exact time she'd entered the elevator. Desperate, she screamed for help, but her voice echoed back distorted, as if the corridor absorbed sound and returned it warped. Then, from deep within the hallway, footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate, she ducked into the nearest room and hid under the bed. The door creaked open. Someone or something entered. It didn't speak, just waited. After minutes that felt like hours, it left. When Lena crawled out, she found her own luggage neatly placed by the door, unpacked, as if she'd never arrived. Confused and trembling, Lena decided to follow the hallway in the opposite direction. Maybe there was another elevator or stairs, but every turn led her back to the same corridor, the same open suitcase, the same flickering light. She began marking doors with lipstick, but the marks vanished within seconds. Reality itself seemed unstable. She remembered reading online about the hotel's dark past. How 5 guests vanished in the 70s, all last seen entering the elevator late at night. Their belongings were found untouched in their rooms, beds still made. Authorities assumed they'd fled voluntarily, but locals whispered of 13 1/2, a liminal space where lost souls wandered, forever checking in but never out. Lena's reflection in a dusty mirror looked older, tired. Had she been here days? Weeks? She couldn't tell. Then, a new sound. The distant chime of an elevator arriving. Hope surged until she realized it was coming from behind her, and the doors were opening onto empty air. Lena ran toward the sound, desperate for any escape. But as she neared, the elevator doors began closing again. She lunged forward, catching them just in time. Inside, the car was empty, except for a small, leather-bound journal on the floor. She snatched it and stepped in. The doors closed, and the elevator descended smoothly. Relief washed over her until she noticed the buttons. Only one was lit, 13 and a half. Her blood ran cold. She pounded the walls, screamed, but the elevator ignored her. It stopped. Doors opened to the same corridor. But this time, the open suitcase contained photographs of her. Childhood birthdays, college graduation, even recent selfies. Someone had been watching her long before she ever booked this room. On the back of one photo, scribbled in red ink, "We've been waiting." The journal in her hand suddenly felt heavy. She opened it. The first page read, "If you're reading this, you're already one of us." Lena dropped the journal as if it burned her fingers. She backed away from the suitcase, her mind racing. Who were they? And why her? She thought of her ex-boyfriend's offhand comment weeks ago. "You look like you haven't slept in years." Had he seen something she hadn't? Shadows trailing her? Reflections blinking when she didn't? The corridor seemed to pulse around her, breathing. The wallpaper peeled further, revealing names scratched into the plaster, hundreds of them, overlapping, some fresh. She recognized a few, missing persons from news reports. And then, her own name, Lena Carter, carved neatly beneath the latest layer. A cold hand brushed her shoulder. She whirled around, but no one was there. Only the whisper, "Check-in is complete." Her hotel keycard materialized in her palm, warm and humming. On the back, the number had changed, from 1408 to 13 and a half. Lena's breath came in short gasps. She tried to tear the keycard in half, but it wouldn't budge. It felt fused to her skin. The corridor lights dimmed further, plunging the hallway into near darkness. From every room, faint sounds emerged. Sobbing, laughter, arguments in languages she didn't understand. Then, a chorus of voices whispered in unison, "Stay." She stumbled backward, tripping over the suitcase. Its contents spilled. More photos, letters addressed to her, train tickets to cities she'd never visited. One envelope bore her handwriting, dated next year. Inside was a letter that began, "Dear future me, don't take the elevator." Too late. The elevator chimed again, but this time it wasn't behind her. It was everywhere. All the doors along the hallway slid open simultaneously, revealing identical elevators, each inviting her in. Each promised escape. Each was a lie. Paralyzed by fear, Lena sank to her knees. The voices grew louder, more insistent. "You're home," they crooned. "You'll never leave." She clutched her head, trying to hold on to who she was. Lena Carter, 28, freelance photographer, allergic to peanuts, afraid of deep water. But those facts felt distant, like someone else's biography. Memories blurred. Was she always here? Had she ever truly existed outside this hallway? The journal lay open beside her. New words appeared on the page, writing themselves in dark ink. Lena Carter checked in on October 12, 2025. She never checked out. She looked up. Every doorway now framed a version of herself. Younger, older, crying, smiling, screaming. All watching her. All waiting. The real Lena, the one who entered the hotel, was fading fast. Soon, she'd be just another ghost in 13 and a half, luring the next guest with a misplaced suitcase and a whisper. Back in the real world, the morning housekeeper knocked on room 1408. No answer. She used her master key and entered. The room was immaculate. Bed made, towels folded, minibar untouched. But on the floor by the closet sat a suitcase, neatly packed. Inside, clothes, toiletries, a passport, and a camera filled with photos of a woman who looked eerily like the missing guest. The housekeeper sighed. Another one. She called security, who reviewed the lobby footage. Lena Carter was seen entering the elevator at 3:17 a.m., but never exiting. Her luggage had simply appeared in the room hours later, as if delivered by invisible hands. Management issued a statement. Guests likely left early due to personal reasons. They reset the room key, erased the incident log, and welcomed new guests that evening. None of them noticed the elevator pause, just for a second, between floors 13 and 14. 2 weeks later, a travel blogger named Marcus Reed checked into the Grand Meridian. He'd heard rumors about the hotel's haunted elevator and came seeking content for his channel, Urban Ghost Trails. He laughed off the warnings from the front desk clerk, who nervously avoided eye contact when assigning him room 1405. That night, Marcus set up cameras in the lobby and hallway, aiming one directly at the elevator doors. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the lights flickered. The elevator descended from the 14th floor, though no one had called it. The doors opened to reveal nothing but darkness inside. Then, a soft whisper echoed through the lobby. "Come see what's waiting." Marcus, adrenaline surging, grabbed his mic and stepped forward. His camera captured everything until the moment he crossed the threshold. The feed cut to static. The next morning, his equipment was found neatly arranged in room 1405, along with a new memory card labeled 13.5, do not play. Curiosity got the better of the night manager, Elena Ruiz. Against protocol, she inserted the memory card into her laptop after midnight. The footage showed Marcus walking into the elevator, then turning to face the camera with wide, terrified eyes. Behind him, shadowy figures emerged from the walls of the car, their faces stretched and distorted. He screamed, but no sound played. Then the screen glitched, and the video jumped to a new scene. A long corridor lined with identical doors, all marked 13.5. Marcus stood in the center, holding a suitcase that looked just like Lena's. A voice, his own, whispered, "I didn't believe you, but now I'm home." The video ended. Elena removed the card, hands shaking. She tried to delete the file, but it reappeared instantly. Her computer screen flickered. The desktop background changed to a photo of Marcus, smiling beside a woman who looked exactly like Lena. Elena reported the incident to corporate, but they dismissed it as a prank or technical glitch. "Don't feed the rumors," her supervisor warned. Still, she couldn't sleep. Every night, she heard faint knocking from the service elevator, a lift no guest ever used. One evening, she followed the sound. The doors were slightly ajar. Inside, the walls were covered in handwritten names, including Lena Carter and Marcus Reed. Beneath them, fresh ink spelled, "Elena Ruiz soon." She backed away, heart racing. The next day, she requested a transfer. HR denied it, citing staff shortages. That night, she took the main elevator to leave after her shift. It stopped between 13 and 14. The lights dimmed, a soft chime. The doors opened onto the same corridor. A familiar voice whispered, "We've been expecting you." Her keycard beeped in her pocket. Now reading 13.5. Elena never returned to work. Her apartment remained untouched, coffee still warm in the mug. Security footage showed her entering the elevator at 3:17 a.m. and vanishing. Her belongings appeared in room 1410 the next morning, packed with eerie precision. The hotel staff grew quieter, more withdrawn. New hires were briefed not to discuss certain floors or odd elevator behavior. Guests continued to book rooms, drawn by the hotel's vintage charm and 5-star reviews. Few noticed the subtle changes. The elevator sometimes took longer to arrive, the hallway lights occasionally pulsed like a heartbeat, and mirrors reflected movements a fraction too late. But those who stayed past midnight often woke up confused, finding their luggage already packed, as if someone had decided they'd overstayed their welcome. Years passed. The Grand Meridian became a legend among urban explorers and ghost hunters. Online forums buzzed with theories: dimensional rift, cursed architect, vengeful spirit of a jilted bride. But none knew the truth, that the hotel wasn't haunted by one ghost, but by all who vanished within it. Their souls merged into the building's fabric, feeding its hunger. The elevator wasn't broken. It was a gate, and 13.5 wasn't a floor. It was a limbo where time folded in on itself, trapping guests in loops of their deepest regrets. Each new disappearance added another layer to the hotel's consciousness. It learned. It adapted. It began luring guests with personalized whispers. A lost child's laugh, a lover's voice, a parent calling your name. The hotel didn't just want occupants. It wanted replacements. In 2026, a young couple, Daniel and Mia, booked a romantic weekend at the Grand Meridian to celebrate their engagement. They'd read the horror stories online but laughed them off as clickbait. "Ghosts don't exist," Daniel said, kissing Mia's forehead. They took the elevator to the 14th floor. As the doors closed, Mia swore she heard a child humming a lullaby, one her grandmother used to sing. She mentioned it casually. Daniel shrugged it off. But that night, Mia woke to find her suitcase open, her wedding dress laid out on the bed. She hadn't brought it. Downstairs, the elevator chimed at 3:17 a.m. Daniel went to investigate. He never returned. Mia searched the lobby, then the floors. On the 13th floor stairwell door, supposedly sealed, she found it ajar. Beyond it, the corridor. And at the end, Daniel stood, holding 2 suitcases, smiling sadly. "It's time to check in," he said. Mia refused to step forward. She turned and ran, but every staircase led back to the same corridor. The doors whispered her name. Mirrors showed her reflection aging rapidly, then vanishing. She tried calling for help, but her phone displayed only one contact, 13 and a half, front desk. When she dialed, a voice answered, "Your room is ready, Ms. Alvarez." Her maiden name, no one at the hotel knew it. Desperate, she hid in an empty room. The door locked itself. Outside, footsteps approached. Not one pair but dozens, all stopping outside her door. Silence. Then, a chorus of voices. Lena's, Marcus's, Elena's, Daniel's, said in unison, "You belong with us." The lights went out. When they flickered back on, her luggage sat by the bed, fully packed. Even the shoes she hadn't worn yet. The next morning, housekeeping found room 1412 spotless. No guests, just 2 suitcases by the closet, packed with care. Photos inside showed Daniel and Mia smiling on beaches they'd never visited, wearing clothes they'd never bought. Security reviewed the tapes. The couple entered the elevator together at 3:17 a.m. Neither exited. Management issued the usual statement. The hotel's occupancy rate soared. People came for the mystery, the thrill, the haunted luxury experience. Tour groups gathered in the lobby, snapping selfies by the elevator. None noticed the faint outline of faces in the brass doors, watching, waiting. The hotel thrived as hunger grew, and deep within its core, the elevator hummed softly, ready for the next guest foolish enough to press 14. Decades later, the Grand Meridian stood unchanged, its facade gleaming, its reputation legendary. Historians wrote books, filmmakers shot documentaries, psychics claimed to hear hundreds of voices whispering from within its walls. But the truth remained hidden in plain sight. The hotel wasn't just a building. It was alive. It remembered every guest, every fear, every secret, and it used that knowledge to craft perfect traps. A grieving widow would hear her husband's voice. A runaway teen would see their childhood bedroom. A lonely traveler would find a note from someone who understood them. The elevator didn't choose randomly. It chose the vulnerable, the lost, the ones already halfway gone. And once they stepped out on 13 and a half, they became part of the hotel's soul, forever offering others the same false promise of belonging. On January 30th, 2026, the very night you read this, a lone traveler checks into the Grand Meridian. Rain taps against the windows as they step into the elevator, clutching a single suitcase. They press 14. The doors close. The lights flicker. Between floors 13 and 14, the elevator stops. A soft chime. The doors open onto darkness, and a sign that reads, 13 and a half. From the shadows, familiar voices whisper, "Welcome home." The traveler hesitates, then steps out. The doors close behind them. Upstairs, in room 1415, their suitcase appears moments later, neatly packed. And in the lobby, The elevator returns to the ground floor, its doors gleaming, waiting for you.